Well, welcome back, everyone. Today I'm honored to be joined by Dr. Roger Hall. Thank you so much for joining me.
Jackson, glad to be here. Thanks for inviting me.
Yeah, pleasure having you. You wrote a fantastic book, Staying Happy, Being Productive, something I really enjoyed. So I thought I'd have you on talk a little bit more about that. You had 10 steps to kind of achieving greatness, we'll call it. The first one was taking control of your thoughts. Did you have a reason to put that at number one?
Mostly because it's what I do every day. It's the foundation of my work, and it's the foundation for any change. Is being able to monitor and manage your thinking. So all of the others are somewhat any change in that or any of the others is dependent on changing your life or changing your thoughts.
Mm-hmm.
So when I talk to people, they say, "Well, I want this outcome. I want this different outcome." And I say, "Okay, what um what's going to get you there?" And they say, "Well, I'm going to imitate the best practices of this other organization. I'm going to change my behavior." And so in order to get an outcome, they say, "All I need to do is change my behavior." And I said, "Okay, so what changes behavior?" And they look at me like, I'm asking the world's most difficult question. What changes behavior is changed thoughts.
Mm-hmm.
So that's the sequence. Change thoughts, change behavior changes outcomes.
Yeah. Monitoring your thoughts is something we don't do as much anymore. It feels like it kind of with so much going on, it's harder and harder to monitor our thoughts.
Yeah, it's absolutely because of media. And again, I'm not a luddite. I'm not anti-technology. I'm not anti-media. Uh,
Mhm.
but because we have all of this extra stimulation, it's very easy to distract ourselves from our internal dialogue. And in my business, we call the the thing called thinking about your thinking is called metacognition. So meta means above. It doesn't mean Facebook. It means above. There was a joke in there, Jackson.
Yes. Yeah.
It's a joke, son. You missed it. Um, so metacognition means above cognition, above thinking, and the ancient mystics used to call it the third eye.
Mhm.
So there was a band called Third Eye Blind, which pretty much says they can't think about themselves.
Yes, I think I heard them. My dad made me listen to them growing up as a small child. So there you go. But the how often is this kind of third eye thinking necessary?
uh, anytime anytime you want to make any improvement or change in your life, it's required that you be able to think about your thinking. I, you know, I think every leader that I work with, their first most difficult task is finding time for quiet reflection, and it's only in that time of quiet reflection that they're able then to get their brain into a state where they're able to think about their thinking.
Yeah, and it also kind of helps to kind of detox is maybe not the right word, but offload everything that's kind of like you get all this information and you kind of don't have time to process it. You receive it all and then you're just having time to kind of offload it, understand it all. A lot of people don't have time for that though, because they've got so much going on in life. How important is it to cut out time for this as opposed to like listening to a book while you're driving in the car, just sitting there and thinking?
Yeah, I mean it's a great question. I'd say if you spend um, 20 minutes, that would be more than most people. uh, if the thought of quiet reflection for 20 minutes is overwhelming to you, cut it in half. And if that's overwhelming to you, cut it in half again. So if all you can do is 5 minutes of quiet reflection, that's fine. What we know about two states of mind, one of which is called meditation, where you're focusing your thinking. Um, that's what I encourage people to do in their quiet reflection is be able to focus on their thoughts, that metacognition. The other state is daydreaming, mind wandering, and our mind goes to daydreaming by default. And when our brain is daydreaming, that network of structures is called the default mode network, or mind wandering daydreaming. And it's in that time that your brain releases a chemical that repairs your brain and allows it to grow.
Hmm.
So everybody who's, everybody who's filling every minute with stimulation is not allowing their brain to repair itself or grow.
Yeah, and so daydreaming versus meditation. Um, should you set aside time for daydreaming or just for meditation and kind of have um, an open mind to daydreaming?
I'd say both. I'd say both. I think the ability to focus your thinking in that quiet reflection time, the thinking about your thinking, to direct your thinking, that's a discipline that's absolutely necessary. Um, Everybody daydreams in the shower, right? I mean, that's why your best ideas come in the shower, is because you're not thinking about anything else. It's warm, it's comfortable. You know how to take a shower. Nobody's bothering you, and that's when the great ideas come.
Hmm. Yeah. When you're meditating, what are you supposed to be thinking about?
Well, um, the first step of meditation, and again, this seems for a lot of Western thinkers really ooey gooey. This is like, oh my gosh, this is bad stuff.
Hmm.
Every religious tradition has a contemplative branch. Now, most of the study in modern psychology has been in Buddhist meditation, because the psychologists, like, they're hip to that. They like that. But if you're Jewish, if you're Muslim, if you're Christian, every one of those every one of those religions has a contemplative tradition. So what I encourage people to do is look at your religious tradition. What have your um, ancestors in your faith done? And probably one of the easiest ways to start is to just focus on your breathing. And all you have to do is count your breathing. So you breathe in one, you breathe out two, you get to 10. That's a start. Um, then there is fixed a thing called fixed attention meditation. And Jackson, have you ever been to a bonfire, or you've had a fire in the fireplace and you're watching the flames and you get that sort of woo woo feeling?
Yeah, like you've kind of like it's taken over.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's called fixed attention meditation. And so most all of us have experienced it, but we don't know what we're looking for. We're thinking we're going to do some sort of cosmic experience, but it's really a way um, of focusing on one thing so intently that all the other things kind of fade away. And a candle flame or a fire in a fireplace can do that. Then the third step is what's called mindfulness meditation. And this is a more advanced meditation. And what it does is it's really focusing on a particular idea or concept. And then when one of those distracting things comes in, because we all get distracted, right? So I'm, in my religious tradition, it's prayer. So if I'm praying for somebody, right? In the Buddhist tradition, they would say that you're meditating on compassion toward another person. Well, in the Christian tradition, you're praying for another person.
Right. Yeah.
Well, then I think, oh my gosh, I got to pay the electric bill. I forgot. I got to pay. Uh, and then I think, I suck at meditation. I suck at praying. Whatever it is. Well, that's not mindful. What's mindful is, the electric bill thought came to my head. That's really distracting me, but that happens to everybody. And for now, I'm just going to just push that away, and I'm going to go back to what I was doing, rather than get all spun up about being unable to focus your thinking.
Yeah. Is there a can it be helpful to write down whatever you're thinking about when you're focusing on this one thing. Like praying, I'm a Christian, so obviously I pray more than I don't think I've ever meditated.
Sure you have.
But
You just don't call it that because that seems woo-woo to you, right?
Potentially, yes.
Yeah.
But writing it down so that like you have it, because you do want to pay your electric bill, but it's not the time to think
Mm.
about that.
So what you're saying is when that idea comes, write it down to get rid of it.
Right. So
Oh,
so
that's
somewhere else and then
yeah, that's a fantastic way to do it because what that does, Jackson, is it interrupts the open loop, and it's called the Zeigarnik effect. And I don't need to tell you the whole backstory, but the Zeigarnik effect is that completed tasks or incomplete tasks are remembered better than completed tasks.
Mhm.
As soon as you write it down, in one sense, it's complete. You've closed the loop. You go, I don't have to think about that anymore. It's there. And so it'll fall out of your head, and then you can go back to what you were doing. So it's a great technique that
Yeah.
you're using.
Yeah. This meditation you mentioned that it can seem kind of woo woo. Um
Mhm.
I think a lot of people feel that it's a bit too self-focused and self-centered to kind of sit down and just think about me and think about my thoughts. Um, from a Christian perspective, what's your kind of thoughts about that?
Well, I think you could look at this in the context of all personal development. Isn't all personal development potentially just too much navel gazing, right?
Right,
And um, it can be, unless the purpose of this reflection is to improve yourself for the benefit of others. If it really is, this is just about me, and I'm I'm going to do whatever. Then yes, it's ultimately a selfish act. But if anytime I'm trying to improve in an area in my life, be it mental, physical, interpersonal, it doesn't really matter. If it's designed in service to other people, then it's not a selfish act.
right. Yeah. And that's why I think it's helpful to kind of have um, God in the back of your mind or present while you're like if you are meditating, if you are just thinking about like your thinking and your thoughts and all of that, realize that this is like that God is there influencing those kinds of things. I think is helpful because then it's not just about you because it can quite easily become just about you.
It's very easy for it to become about you. And I think your conception of God is a really important piece of this. That if you believe that God um, has expectations on you, that
Hmm.
that you will do certain things with whatever gifts He's given you, then yeah, absolutely, that will change the purpose for why you're doing it. If you think God just loves you just the way you are, and you and God are just, we're tight, babe. We're there's no expectation for improvement. There's no expectation for service to others. Then yeah, it can be very, even if you've got God in the loop. If your conception of God is, in my mind, wrong, then yeah, it can still be a selfish act.
Yeah, it seems like a good maybe a good way to think about this for Christians because that's Christians are kind of always hesitant about these kinds of things. Is like it's just talking to God. Right. And he doesn't talk back in the sense that like you and I are talking, but like meditation is just you're talking to God about the things in your life, about what you're thinking about, how you're thinking, all of that, and
I
giving
think
it up
that's
to Him.
I think it's, your lips don't have to move, but it's a deep, it- you can pray and you can pinball around on 100 different topics. Like you have your list of people you're going to pray for. Okay. And then there's a missionary in Zambia, and I got to pray for that person. And then there's my Aunt Edna's toe. And then there's, and you're going through this list. That's not really meditation. But if you're deeply focused on, let's say, one person, and you're you're slowing yourself down, then that's that sort of communication that we're talking about.
Yeah, like, Lord, show me, where I'm wrong. This is how I'm thinking exactly about this thing that I'm doing. This is how I'm thinking about my work. This is how I'm thinking about yada yada yada. And show me exactly what I'm doing right, what I'm doing wrong, and where I need to improve. So that it's because if it's just you in your own head, you can get lost. But if God's there and you're directing these things towards Him, then there's an actual path towards improvement. It feels like.
Yeah, and then I think the other piece of it that I think you're kind of implying is that there are a lot of people who are Christians who believe that prayer is talking to God. You know,
Hmm.
here's my list of grievances. Here's my list of requests, and get on it.
As though
Um,
God were a vending machine.
uh, yeah, like he's your pet monkey that
Right.
he's gonna give you what you want, and entertain you. I think part of part of the meditation piece is being quiet as well. Um, David says, um, he talks about meditating on on scripture,
Right.
and I don't think it's that he's just reading it. He's really deeply, quietly focused on one thing at a time.
Mhm. Yeah. This, that flow state you mentioned with the fire, it does sound a lot like flow state. Is there a similarity or differences there?
Um, yeah, I'll be probably a bit fussy on that. The flow state is um, another related state, but it's different because flow happens typically when people are solving a challenging problem in their domain of expertise. So whereas meditation is quite quiet, um, and not focused on accomplishing a task. Flow happens when where you lose yourself in accomplishing a task.
Mhm.
So uh, whatever you're working on, and it's usually at work that this happens, where you lose yourself in the work, and you lose a sense of time, then you're
Right.
in flow. In meditation, whether you're sitting or whether you're walking, um, you're you're just doing one thing.
Yeah.
Um, can we talk about one other Christian tradition with
Yeah.
meditation? Is walking meditation. Have Back in the Middle Ages, um, prior to the Reformation, um, the Catholic Church, which at the time was the only church, the monks would walk labyrinths. Do you know what a labyrinth is?
Yeah, yeah. Like, the story of Theseus and the Minotaur.
Um, what Yes, and it it bears some connection to that, but in a labyrinth, as opposed to a maze where you can get lost,
Mhm.
in a labyrinth, there's only one path. And as long as you
Oh,
keep
got it, okay.
walking, you'll eventually come out. And it can be in a hedgerow, or you can see in some cathedrals in England, the Chartres Cathedral. In France, it's just um, carved into the floor. And
Right.
so monks who have like a monkey mind like mine, who can't sit still, they would walk this and do their prayers while they were walking, and it's a way to meditate quietly while moving.
Yeah. I, wonder if that's why a lot of the time people like to walk while they take phone calls.
I
Is
do.
kinda keep your yeah, I do as well.
Yeah.
I can't really sit still that and, I gotta be walking around, I gotta be moving, I gotta be so that I can think more, accurately.
Exactly. So you can think more. And when I go walk my dog, sometimes my best ideas come in because I know the route. We do the same route, and it doesn't require a lot of attention to my exterior world. I'm able to then be in my thoughts.
Yeah. trying to bring this quietness into your life is kind of the big challenge, especially for people who have, they have kids, they have a social life, they have
Sure.
work, they have church, they have so many things going on that are good things to be happening, right? It's not they're just spending all their time on social media. How do you slowly institute some time of quietness into
Right?
your life?
You start small. You start with 5 minutes, and if you got little kids, you just you go into a closet somewhere, just try to get some quiet. Find a time of day that works, um, and then work your way up to a longer period of time. We hear about these monks that meditate for 8 hours a day. Well, they didn't start at 8 hours. They started at with 30 seconds, and then they worked their way up to a minute, and then 5 minutes, and then 10 and 20 and a half an hour. It's like any discipline. You start small, and you keep working on it, and over the course of years you'll get better at it.
Yeah. How do you control your thoughts?
um Well, the first step is to monitor them. So I talk about monitor and then manage. The first is to recognize that we all have a stream of consciousness running through our head, but we very rarely sample it. And um, once you sample it and develop metacognition, then you can see the destructive thoughts that are going through your head. And it's only when you see the destructive thoughts in your head, the ones that lead to unhappy emotions or unproductive behaviors, then you can go, oh, there it is again. Oh, okay. I keep seeing it. That one's not very good. And then you replace it. You take the one habitual thought and you replace it with a more accurate thought. There's an old proverb that as one nail drives out another nail, so a good habit drives out a bad habit. And so it isn't just eliminating your bad thought habits; it's replacing them with more accurate thoughts.
Accurate or beneficial to whatever you're doing, which is kind of you brought up pessimism versus optimism in your book.
Yeah,
I think that ties into this well.
yeah, but there's a distinction I want to make before we talk about optimism versus pessimism, which is you said I said accurate and you said beneficial, and I think it has to be both of those things, because if it's just accurate, you can find a lot of pessimistic things that are more
That
accurate,
are true. Yeah,
and if it's only beneficial, then you can start thinking about puppies, kittens, and unicorns, and not really thread that needle where it's both accurate and beneficial.
yeah,
And sometimes you need an outsider to say, hey, listen, I need a different perspective. Can you help me think through this?
yeah. Pessimism versus optimism seems a lot like a personality trait. Is it something you can train?
Oh, absolutely. If you're and you're right. There's probably some temperamental difference, probably inborn, between optimists and pessimists. But what you're getting at is it malleable? Yeah, it's malleable. That there's a researcher who I really respect named Martin Seligman, and he says I'm a pessimist, and he said I know my life would be better if I could be more optimistic, so I'm working on it. And he has a book called Learned Optimism, and the book, while very academic, is really focused on, okay, what are the tactics and strategies you can use to adopt a more optimistic frame of mind when it's beneficial. I mean, there are times when realism is a value, and there are
Right.
times when optimism or hope, um, so it's different concept in my mind, but related concept. When hope is beneficial, or when optimism is beneficial, sometimes it's beneficial to be a pessimist. Um, but yes, you can train yourself.
Yeah, and I think there's a you can be both pessimistic and optimistic about a situation at the same time. You can be, realistic about, okay, this is exactly where I am, but then optimistic about this is where I think I'm going to get, and kind of balancing those two.
Right.
Um, how do you start to for people who have mostly pessimistic or what they would call realistic thoughts, transition those to optimistic thoughts about the future, about their abilities to get there?
Well, I think part of it is um, to question some pieces of your pessimism. I mean, the three basic um, characteristics of pessimism are permanence, pervasiveness, and personalization. So permanence is when something goes bad, it's always going to go bad. I fail a math test. The permanent attribution is I'll always fail math
Because
tests.
I'm bad at math, right?
I'm bad at math, right?
Yeah.
Pervasiveness is I'm not only bad at math, I'm bad at school. I'm not very smart. I'm not very good looking. People don't like me. My life sucks. I suck.
Yeah.
It takes a bad performance on a math test to say I'm bad at everything, and I'm unworthy of love and deserving of punishment.
Right.
And the third piece is personalization, which is um, why does this always happen to me? Bad things always happen to me. Well, you failed the math test, okay? And you may not be good at math, but is that a permanent state? So you start to question that assumption. I, right now, I suck at math, but I suppose it's a skill and I could get better. Or I suck at math, I've tried, I've taken lessons, I've done all I can. I'm not getting any better at math. So I better focus on the things I am good at. So even though I
Right.
suck at math, I don't suck at everything.
Yeah.
And rather than say God has cursed me with a broken math gene, say, you know, um, it's within my power to change this. So I'm going to keep trying. Or if you've tried and you haven't been successful, say, okay, well, I'm going to work on other things.
Right.
It's not God's curse. It's just one of those things.
And I wasn't made for math, and that's totally fine.
Yeah,
Pessimism is kind of I think G.K. Chesterton had a good definition of pessimist versus optimist, which was an optimist looks up at the sky and a pessimist looks down at his toes. That pessimism is kind of an inward focused, look how bad at me, woe is me, I'm the worst, nothing's ever going to happen good for me, versus
right.
optimism, which is like, look out there, look at the world, what a wonderful world, I'm going to go get it. Um, is there for people who are all the way pessimistic, who are kind of sitting in the like, I'm bad at math, I'll always be bad at math because I'm stupid and no one likes me. How
Yeah.
do you start to get out of there?
You just start to question one of those things at a time. Um, and you look for evidence. And sometimes you need an outsider to help you look at evidence. And the thing about pessimists is they are right more often than optimists. So it's really
Right.
important that you give them evidence and you start to question it and you start to question, is it really true that nobody likes me? Well, a lot of people don't like me, but do I have any friends? Okay, well, is that outside of my control or is that inside my control? Is this something I can change? Each one of those is just a little tiny question against the overarching assumptions about the world. And as soon as you get a chink in that overwhelming assumption, then you can start to chip away at other assumptions.
Right. Yeah. I think that also it is necessary to come at that from a Christian or at least a religious perspective. Because if you're just coming at it from a materialistic perspective, then it is very possible that you were a bug in the system, that everything is going to go wrong for you, just because that's who you are. But if you believe that there is a God who has the best intentions for you, right? Then repent of the pessimism, repent of the self-centeredness, and turn to Him and realize that ye fearful saints, fresh courage take. The clouds ye so much dread are big with mercy and shall break in blessings on your head. Right? That sometimes God puts you in the desert, but He's going to take you out of it eventually.
If you have a conception of God like that, yes. And you can look at historical figures. William Cooper, who was a hymn writer, really, really suffered from very, very low mood. And then he was friends with, who's the guy who wrote Amazing Grace?
Not Wilberforce.
No,
Um, Bunyan?
no,
Was it John Bunyan?
no. He wrote Pilgrim's Progress.
I think
Wilberforce
it's
abolished slavery. Anyway,
this was the guy who was the slave trader.
he was a slave trader and he was a
Yeah,
slave at one point. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. I don't remember his name,
I can't
unfortunately.
remember his name, but they were friends. And Cooper, who was a hymn writer, really, really suffered with low mood, and he just thought he was a worm. And so they would go on these long walks, and his friend would tell him, the guy who wrote Amazing Grace, that's not true. Here's the evidence. And so sometimes you need somebody who will argue with you against the evidence. Um, and again, it all depends on your conception of God. If you have a conception of God that God is a punitive God and He wants nothing more than to punish you, then yeah, you're gonna have
Then
you're gonna have
pessimism makes sense.
pardon.
Then pessimism makes sense.
Then pessimism absolutely makes sense. Yes,
Yeah. It was John Newton.
John
I
Newton.
looked it
That's
up.
right.
Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah.
Yes. Um, second part of the second thing you brought up, which was exercise life, becoming acquainted with the treadmill. Um, we as a culture have kind of lost an appreciation of exercise. I saw a video recently of the 1960s. I think that may be wrong, but the requirements for guys in PE class in high school was like that you could do 20 pull-ups and 50 push-ups and you could climb a rope to the ceiling. Now we've kind of lost that appreciation for exercise. Where'd that go?
Um, I was born in the '60s, but I didn't go to gym class in the '60s. But yeah, we had to climb a rope and we had to do pull ups. That was, the president's fitness. What was it? Presidential Medal of Fitness, I think, was still happening when I was in junior high and high school. I think what we've done is we've just said that's not that important. That schools have emphasized academics over a whole person view. Um, we've created this idea that the mind is separate from the body, and probably in the last 20 years there's been such an explosion of evidence. It's always been there, but there's been an explosion of evidence that your mental ability, your mental fitness is intimately tied with your physical fitness. And so if you don't have a good metabolism and if you don't have a fit body, then you're not creating the right environment for your brain to thrive.
Yeah. Um, does that differ guys to girls? Is there a difference between the genders there?
In terms of what? I mean, there are, of course, gender differences, but
Right. No, I mean, in terms of the effect that exercise has.
I don't know if there's any. I don't know if there's any research that shows a sex difference between men and women on exercise. I think it's good for everybody. I
Yeah.
I, I mean, I'd be open if somebody could show me that, but as far as I know, there is no evidence that there is no research that shows that there's a sex difference.
It's just mutually beneficial all around.
Oh yeah, yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
metabolism is metabolism. Women and men have different levels of hormones, and but our brains, men and women's brains are different, but they run on mostly the same fuel.
Right.
So, anything that you're doing to increase oxygen, glucose, ketones, all of that to get to the brain, and then the whole cascade of neurotransmitters, those are not sex specific.
How much is necessary to kind of trigger that?
How much exercise?
Yeah.
Oh, if you just go for, a walk for 20 minutes, you'll be better off than most people. We have this conception that exercise has to mean going to the gym or playing a game of pickup basketball. If you just go walk your dog, that'd be great. If we look at Europe, that has a lot more stairs and a lot more walking, they don't go work out. They just go to work and they have to walk
Right.
a couple miles up 10 flights of stairs, and there you go. They're fit because of that. So um, it doesn't have to be much. And I think the big problem people have is they're trying, they want to do it just the right way. It's just get started on the thing you like.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. I started with I think I did 50 push-ups in the morning because I was like, I got to do something, and
That's great.
that was all I did.
50 is really good, by the way,
Yeah,
Jackson. Yeah.
yeah, and then well, they weren't great push-ups. I'll be completely honest. They were
They
pretty
don't have
bad.
to be great push-ups. 50 is a big number, you know?
Yeah,
Yeah.
but then worked away to here we are now. That also feels like a good time to do this meditation, this silent focus.
Yeah, that's a great point. Like if the physical activity you're doing is a repetitious activity, like swimming, for example.
Right.
If you're in the pool swimming, you can do your quiet reflection during that time.
Yeah.
If you're running on a track where you don't have to think about oncoming traffic, then your quiet reflection can happen at that time too. So you can double those things up. You know, you can do
Yeah.
your physical activity and your quiet reflection at the same time.
Yeah, and it's even like you don't need to if it's just a repetitive motion or one that's familiar to you.
Yeah,
So you know you're doing bench press, and you've done bench press a million times. You're at this point you're just counting and
yeah,
focusing on getting the bar up. But then once you're done, it's kind of you get back immediately into that peace, that quietness.
yeah.
Which is why I don't work out with music. I enjoy just sitting there and being quiet. For people who um, go to gyms that are very loud, very
Yeah.
noisy, would you recommend changing gym?
Or get noise canceling headphones.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think, for some people, if you change to instrumental music that doesn't have lyrics, then that could be a benefit to you because it won't distract. Lyrics are very often what distracts people from thinking. But if you're trying to block out exterior noise, then instrumental music would be great. And there's lots. I mean, if you don't like classical music, um, it's a little harder to find. Um, if you like, you can find soundtracks to movies, which are
Just pick up the Minecraft movie soundtrack.
okay.
The Minecraft soundtrack is known for being very peaceful and tranquil.
Well, there you
So
go. Perfect.
that's why I said that. There you go.
Perfect. Okay.
Are there cues throughout the day if you notice kind of you're losing focus, you're kind of getting more tired, things you should look for that okay, I should go take a quick walk or something?
Well, anytime that you feel like your attention is flagging, and you're not able to, you keep getting distracted, then get up and take a walk. If or get some protein in your system. It could be that you're lacking fuel. So you know, grab a handful of nuts or yeah, that's probably the best choice. Grab a handful of nuts and uh, go for a quick walk.
Yeah.
Those things will help you.
Yeah, that's the next thing on your list was, nutritional life, don't eat
Yeah.
battery acid. How much effect does that actually have?
Uh, what do you mean? How much effect does nutrition have?
Yeah, on your cognitive abilities. Because if you look at someone like Donald Trump, he eats, McDonald's and Diet Cokes somewhat regularly, and yet is performing at a very high level. Is there
Well,
an adaptive element to it?
no, I mean the guy's a freak of nature. I mean he's 80 years old. He's up till 3 in the morning. He's still putting together cogent tweets. He's filling his body with not great fuel. So I mean, you kind of got to wonder. I wonder what he'd be like if he ate better and had better physical health. He would be unstoppable.
Yeah,
Um, so and not all of us are built like that. Not all of us have that same um, metabolic speed, and so we have to be more careful with the food we put in our system. Our brains are between, depending on how much you weigh, Jackson, between 2 and 5% of your body mass. But your brain consumes 20 to 25% of the fuel in your food.
yeah,
So your brain is burning energy.
mhm,
And so if you put bad fuel in your body, your brain is not going to function as well. I mean, I know people who are more careful about the fuel they put in their car than the fuel they put in their mouth.
Mhm.
You know, oh, I never go to that gas station because their gas is no good, you know, and my car knocks. But here's a Twinkie. So you know, they'll eat garbage and not realize it's fuel. And it's not just calories. The food that you eat are the building blocks for neurotransmitters, serotonin, epinephrine, norepinephrine, dopamine, acetylcholine, GABA, all of those, and including the hormones, estrogen, progesterone, testosterone, all of those. They're all long amino acid strings, and those come from short amino acid strings. Well, where do those come from? They come from the food we eat. And if we eat garbage, you're not putting the right base materials into your system to build those. So you won't have the chemistry that runs your brain because you haven't given yourself the right basic ingredients.
Yeah. What ingredients should you be putting in your body?
Um, I I think every person's different. Every person's different, and so um, you know, we need a mix of protein, we need a mix of fat, we need a mix of carbohydrates. Those are the three basic groups. And how you get those fuels, you want higher quality of each of those things with with less ick in each of those things. And what we know is that, at least for your brain, fats turn into into carbohydrates. They turn into glucose, and protein turns into glucose for your brain. It just burns slower, so you don't get the peak sugar buzz. But that's what your brain is going to burn. It's either ketones or glucose and oxygen. Those are the things. Those are the fuels it burns.
Yeah. And that's for people who are running currently on pizza and Coke, and seem to be doing just fine. What's the incentive to kind of get off of, slowly move off of that?
you're
Because
going to get you're
they
going to
feel
get
like they're
older,
fine.
and your liver and your kidneys are going to not be able to filter out all the ick as well. So you got to put in higher quality food. And I'm not saying a pizza and a Coke are a bad thing
Right.
in 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 the right
Moderation.
amounts.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's kind of a you have to start now in order to not lose your liver at 80. Is that correct?
Um, you only get one liver. Fortunately, it's one of the parts of our body that tends to regenerate pretty well, but it's a filter. And eventually, as we age, the parts just start to wear out. So if you treat your liver and your kidneys and your internal organs and your brain, and you feed it bad fuel when you're young, yeah, it'll cost you when you're later.
Yeah. How does this help you? The book is called Staying Happy, Being Productive. How does this help you, the nutrition side, help you stay happy?
Well, where does happiness come from? Happiness comes from a pattern of thinking. I mean, this is everything. You know, all the rest of this is a support system for our brains. Who we are, how we think, and how we feel is is a product of the activity of our brains. And there's tremendous evidence now. There's an author who wrote a book called Brain Energy. His name's Chris Palmer. He's a Harvard research psychiatrist, and he argues that most mental illness, which is dysfunctions in emotional regulation, are a result of metabolic dysfunction. That
Poor
our
nutrition.
brain, because it uses so much fuel, is an early warning sign of other metabolic dysfunction. So, depression,
Mm,
anxiety, schizophrenia, which is a thought disorder,
hmm.
bipolar disorder, all of these things. He says those are um, those are disorders whose symptoms can be relieved and eliminated in some cases by changing your diet.
Yeah. No, I think that's a big part of. It can also help hugely with obesity, like even more than going to the gym is just how many calories you're intaking per day versus how many you're outputting. And if you're overweight or you'd like to gain weight and you just kind of balance that, I think it can. Nutrition has a whole lot to do with your body, and once you if your body is healthy, then I think your mind follows suit. Is that more or less correct? Are those
That's
two so linked?
absolutely correct. The healthier your body is, the more healthy your brain will be, and the more emotionally even you'll be. I'll add one more thing to nutrition, which is there's a thing called the brain gut axis, and that our brains are largely dependent in terms of our mood, largely dependent on signals that our brain gets from our gut.
Hmm.
And we are symbiotic. Human beings are symbiotic with the bacteria in our gut. And the bacteria in our gut communicate to the cell wall in the enteric nervous system and send signals up the vagus to change our mood.
Huh.
It's
That's kind of wild.
it's kind of freaky stuff. So
Yeah.
you can change your mood by changing your gut biome. So if you have a proliferation of really, really bad gut biota, bacteria in your gut, and you start getting better, you start getting a healthier gut biome, your mood will improve
And you do that by eating correctly. Is that
by
correct?
eating correctly, making sure you're eating foods. If you want to add by taking probiotics, probiotics have a very short-term effect. Consider them, in the war in your gut between the good bacteria and the bad bacteria, probiotics are mercenaries. They go, they fight, but they don't live there, right?
Right.
And you need prebiotics, which are the foods that the good bacteria feed on and the bad bacteria don't like. So you've got to start changing the foods you eat so that the good bacteria get more food and the bad bacteria starve off. So the good bacteria can kill them, all of which will improve your mood.
Yeah. The fourth thing you had was your love life has a tremendous effect on being productive and staying happy. I think the staying happy part is somewhat common sense, but the being productive part, there's a lot of people who feel like I can separate my work life from my home life, and if my work life is doing well, my home life it doesn't really matter.
Yeah, well,
What are
they're
your
lying
thoughts
to
on that?
themselves. They're just lying to themselves. If your kid is getting picked up by the police, you're going to be distracted at work. You're not going to be as successful as you can be. If you leave your household after an argument with your spouse and go to work, you're not going to concentrate as well.
Hmm.
And if your work is um, extremely stressful and you don't manage it well, you're not going to have enough reserve of willpower to control your tongue or control your temper, and you're going to treat your spouse and your kids badly. So
Yeah,
people who say those are separate things, they're lying to themselves. Human
yeah,
beings are integrated creatures.
yeah. How does that apply to single people like myself?
Well, there's a lot of research that there. It's called the Harvard Grant Study of Men that started in the 1940s, and it's been running even until today. Most of the men that they started studying in the 1940s are now dead, but they started studying their wives and their children. And one of the big takeaways is that longevity and happiness in life is related to the quality of your primary love relationships. So if you're single, it it says that for most people, being involved in a primary love relationship is one of the ways to both enhance the quality of your life, be happier, and live longer. And so as a single person, if you have those desires to have a lifelong love partner, that's a good desire. The other thing is what's the quality of your other primary relationships. So if you're single, you've still got siblings. I don't know. Do you have siblings?
I have siblings. I'm the oldest of 5.
Okay, so you've got siblings and you've got parents. Those are your primary relationships. The quality of those relationships, it doesn't have to be a husband and wife relationship. It doesn't
It
have to be a
shouldn't.
spouse relate.
Right.
Well, at this point, yeah, in your life, it shouldn't be. But if you don't have those things, those are your primary love relationships now. And so you focus and invest on those.
Yeah. Um, there that's kind of a big one. How do people kind of go about mending, restoring, fixing their broken homes?
Well, kids can't fix their parents' broken relationship. That's
Yes.
that's the first thing. But kids can go a long way in repairing broken relationships with other siblings and with individual parents. Um, there, there's this parental estrangement thing that has really kind of been blowing up probably in the last 15 years, where kids are saying, well, I just don't want anything more to do with my parents. Well, did they beat you? Did they abuse you? No, they just don't understand me. Well, that seems like a pretty small reason not to interact with your
Right,
parent.
with the people who raised you.
Yeah, and so I think parents need to acknowledge, okay, what's my part in it? I think some of the current thinking is that it's all the parents' fault. I, I think the young people need to think, okay, there is a benefit for me interacting with parents, honoring my parents, um, even if they irritate me. And because there's no relationship that you'll ever have with anyone who won't irritate you.
Right.
That's just how humans work. So I would say if you want to mend fences as a young person, then you got to look at your responsibility. Are my expectations too high on my parents? Um, Nobody has perfect parents. Every parent uh, really, really screws up, and every good parent knows they've screwed up. Every bad parent thinks they're wonderful. Um, so, as a young person, recognize the with gratitude the good things that you got, because the more you focus on the bad, the more you'll see the bad. And that's just human nature. It's called the negativity bias. And human beings, because of the way our brains are designed to keep us alive, we're really, really good at focusing on the bad, and we very rarely focus on the positive.
Yeah. Um, how do siblings the sibling mending with sorry, not mending, but mending the relationships with other siblings, can that have an effect on how the parents relationships with each other?
Absolutely. There's a, a a therapeutic model called family systems therapy. And what it says is that any change in any individual changes the way all the individuals in the relationship interact. So if two siblings aren't getting along, that will affect how the parents get along. And the analogy that one of my instructors used is, there you are. So in your family, there's 7 people in a boat, right? And the boat, nobody wants the boat to tip over. Well, if somebody is like hanging off the edge, everybody else has got to adapt.
Right.
And then if you come toward the center, then everybody else has to adapt. And that's kind of how it is in a family relationship, that if one relationship is strained, it affects all of the others. Everyone has to adapt. So you fix one, and the others will adapt to that fix to
Yeah.
keep the balance.
How does that um, play out in the individual's life? Let's say I have a strained relationship with my siblings, which, by the way, I don't. They're great people, love them to death. But if I have a strained relationship with my siblings or with my parent, how
Mhm.
does that affect my day to day life and productivity and happiness?
Well, you just be distracted. We have a limited amount of attention and brain energy. And anytime you're spending any of that brain energy and attention on one thing, it subtracts it from your total supply.
Yeah. But there are people who just, like, have completely blocked out the thought of their parents or their siblings. They've moved away, they no longer live in the same town, they don't interact with them at all. Is that still having an effect on them?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, um, human beings attach, sometimes securely, sometimes insecurely, and there are consequences of being of not being attached, and it is a kind of grief if you have a broken relationship with somebody important to you, and you can tell yourself, "Oh, they don't matter to me anymore." Well, okay, then you're done with your grieving, and it's as if they were dead to you. You know, you're dead to me. I mean, it can be like that, and at that point, it has a less negative effect. But that just because it has a less bad effect doesn't mean it doesn't still affect you.
Yeah. 50% of marriages end in divorce. For parents, how do you keep your marriage alive, keep it healthy?
Um, don't make the kids the priority. Make the relationship the priority. If and I think I've seen this happen probably in the last probably 40 years, that there's a change in parenting, and I call it the idolatry of children. That the kid is the center of the family, and the kid should never be the center of the family. The primary love relationship is between the father and the mother, and the kids, even if because they're not the center, there's security in knowing that relationship is primary. And if
Right.
if you have a religious worldview, if, for example, in our case as Christians, the primary relationship is one with God,
Right.
then the relationship between the husband and the wife. But the kids should never rise to the level of the marital relationship or the relationship with God.
What does that look like when things are going wrong and the kids are becoming the center of the relationship or the family?
Uh, y- uh, it's I'm going to sound like an old man yelling at the sky right now. Hey, back
That's
in my
okay.
day.
Sometimes it's necessary.
But let me give you an example. My parents love, I have one sister. My parents loved my sister. They loved me. There was never any doubt that we were loved and taken care of. I played Little League Baseball for, I think, 5 years. My dad came to zero of my practices and came to about half of my games. I never felt neglected by my father
Yeah.
because he has a job.
Right.
Um, Now I see parents going to every practice and every game. And now you've got travel balls. So every weekend is completely
Taken up.
taken up by what the kid wants to do. And parents don't have any time for themselves. They don't have time for their relationship. They don't have any time for privacy because what the kid wants has become the most important thing in the family. And because of that, the kid thinks, well, it's all about me, isn't it? And
Right.
and so so people complain that kids these days, they're that way because you made them that way. You're the grown up. You created a household environment where that happened. That's not the kid's fault. The kid's just responding to that. So so I would say making that primary love relationship uh, the center, and not spending every waking hour on what your kids want. That's better
Right.
for your kids because they know then they're not the center of the universe.
Yeah. They're not the center of their parents' universe. They're kind of the center of their own.
But
And
a good life, you're not the center of anyone's universe. You
right.
recognize, you know, the the only one that I'm the center of their universe is my dog, and I'm in competition with my wife, right? I mean, I shouldn't be the center of anyone's universe, including mine. And I'm going to go on a little bit of a rant. One of the problems with modern psychotherapy in the United States is that we've made everybody just look at themselves and make themselves the center of their life. Well, for what purpose? It's not just so that you feel good about yourself. It's so that you can be more useful for society. There's a Japanese therapy called Morita therapy, and here's how Morita therapy goes. You go in, they put you in the hospital, and for 3 days, nobody talks to you. It's 3 days of quiet reflection. And then they get your nutrition squared away. And then for 3 weeks, you know what you do next? You get on a bus with other patients and you do community service. The end. That's it. That's the
I love
therapy.
that.
And it's
That's
it's
awesome.
it's remarkably effective. And perhaps that's because of the Japanese culture. But Morita therapy works really well because you spend time thinking about yourself. You realize you're not the only one because you get on a bus with a bunch of people who are also kind of having trouble. And then you go do
Yeah.
stuff to help people, and you realize, oh, I'm not such a waste case. I'm
Yeah.
helping people. Then you leave
Yeah.
and go help people some more. That's really a productive life when you're of service to a higher purpose or your fellow man.
Yeah, because suddenly the things like you are about helping, serving other people.
Yes.
And
Yes.
that provides a sense of meaning that you wouldn't have if everything is just about you and about your life and your joy and happiness and fulfillment and all of
Right, right. The
that.
happiest people are not really thinking about themselves. I mean,
Yeah.
the more you spend time just brooding on yourself, the less happy you'll be. So this quiet reflection I'm talking about is really about how do I relate to other people more effectively, not about how wonderful I
How
am.
do I feel about myself? Yeah, exactly.
Right.
Yeah, and the like the parents going kids have away ball. That's not a bad thing to go to their games,
No, it's not. It's
even
not.
if it's across the state. But it is necessary also to create time for just the husband and wife to hang
Well,
out
and,
together.
and at some point you think, is this really worth it to our family? I mean, is this the way we want to spend our time? And every family gets to choose. But but young people, children need to know that their parents know that the parents are the most important reason for the relationship to exist.
Yeah. Um, the communication is also a big part of that. You talked in your book about this the Love Lab, this German experiment, which I really loved. Can you kind of speak more about that?
Actually, it wasn't a German experience. The Love Lab was John Gottman, and John Gottman was out of Seattle, not that far from you.
Oh, okay, there you go.
And he was a marital therapy researcher, and he had all the assumptions that most of us did, all the way up to his research. And everyone believed that good communication was saying, so what I hear you saying is, and I feel hurt when you say, and so he thought he'd watch real couples talk, and they don't talk that way. And he had all this data, and he thought, man, I've got like grants and tens of thousands of hours of couples talking, and it's all crap. And then one of his graduate students said, well, gee, Dr. Gottman, maybe that's the way happy couples do talk. And so, you know, he has an institute, she has a footnote. That's how graduate school works. Um, but then he and his team reconfigured how they looked um, at how marital communication works, and it isn't that. So what I hear you saying is it's this relationship between a bid, which is a bid for intimacy, and a turn. So the bid for intimacy is just a small talk conversation starter. So, hey, I'm going to go to the kitchen to get a coffee, you want one? That's a bid. Here's the turn. Yeah, that'd be great, thanks. Or, why do you talk so much? I'm busy reading. Or, complete silence, ignoring the person. Those are the three turns. Turning toward is, yeah, that'd be great, thanks. And it's not like, oh, honey, you touch my heart every time you go get a coffee for
You
me.
make me feel so special.
You make
Yeah,
me feel special. Because, everybody knows that's kind of creepy.
yeah,
Um, but you just go, yeah, thanks. So it's slightly positive and on topic. Okay. The turning against is negative, but it's on topic. Don't bother me. I'm reading. Okay. I don't want coffee. quit bothering me. We know we're talking about getting a cup of coffee from the kitchen, but it's pretty negative. And then the last one is turning away, not acknowledging the other person. Okay,
Yeah,
it's looking at your phone, you know, instead of responding. Of the three of those, good relationships are built on bids and turning toward. Bad relationships are built on turning against and turning away. The most destructive, which do you think is most destructive? Turning against or turning away?
I would imagine turning away.
You are absolutely right. Ignoring the other person is the predictor of quick divorce.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
pay attention. And when Gottman did his work, they didn't have these things. You know, his work came out in the late 90s, early 2000s. The proliferation of cell phones hadn't happened. And I'd say it's worse now because of the distraction of the electronics.
yeah, absolutely. And you can say no thanks, I don't want a coffee. If you
That's
don't
a
want the
turning
coffee,
toward. No,
but that's
no,
turning
thanks.
towards.
I don't want a
Yeah,
coffee. Yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
yeah. Um, where did we get this lie that communication, a good communication between husband and wife, is all sappy and oh, this is how you make me feel. This is how I'm understanding you.
Therapists. I mean,
Okay,
they were struggling to figure out how to make it work, and so they came up with these rules, and they thought that would do it, and it just doesn't. You know, I was in graduate school on my internship. I was a part of three research projects assessing the effectiveness of different marital communication, and this was prior to Gottman's work. And you know what we found? Nothing. Oh, that's really confusing. I wonder why these don't work. It's because nobody talks that way.
right.
Yeah. So I mean, Gottman's work just completely upended everything that we knew about marital therapy.
It might be I might be completely wrong in this, but that feels like the kind of like this is how I'm hearing you. It feels like a if a woman were to imagine a guy and a girl talking in her dream scenario, it feels less like an actual interaction between two very different genders.
Yeah,
Am I clutching at straws there?
yeah, I'm not sure it's I'm not sure it's a feminine a feminine fantasy. I think it was an attempt to codify what somebody believed was good communication. Um, you know, do women more so than men like to talk on average? Yeah, probably, but um I'm not sure all women are just ooey gooey about that kind of talk. I mean, some of them think it's
Right.
ridiculous too.
Yeah. Yeah, maybe it's just single therapist women. Um, but
I would say those therapist women are trying to make something work that doesn't work.
yeah.
It's not because they're women. It's just because they're idealists rather than realists.
Yeah, I think that's a better way of saying it. You talked about the 7 and 14-year itch. Can you kind of explain that more?
Yeah, this goes back to the turning against and turning away. What Gottman found was that um, if you turn away, if you're predominantly turning away in your communication, you divorce between, I think it's 5 and 9 years. If you're predominantly turning against, which is really bickering all the time,
Right.
then you divorce at about 14 years, somewhere between
Got
11
it.
and 15 years. And he called them the 7 year itch and the 14-year itch. And you go, well, like they're so mean to each other. I would have thought that would have made them divorce sooner. I mean, the people who ignore each other don't have a relationship. The people who bicker with each other, they have a relationship. It's a
Right.
bad
Yeah.
one, but
They're
at least
talking.
it's a relationship. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. This is there's I was listening to Arthur Brooks, who's kind of a
Yeah.
relationship. Yeah, you might know of him. He was talking about lovers first, then friends. Kind of this idea that like a good relationship, when you're in one, you're kind of your best friends, but you shouldn't start out that way. Do you have anything to
Huh.
add on that?
I've not heard. I mean, I've read a couple of his books. I think a lot of him, but I've not heard that one. I think my thinking about that probably overlaps with his in that I believe infatuation is a really important part of the beginning of a relationship. It'll never sustain it, but it's fun. I mean, I highly recommend infatuation. Being smitten by another person. I mean, if you get to have that, that's fun. Guess
Right.
what? It doesn't last. So once the infatuation begins to fade, you want to make sure there's best friend quality there. So I think I would agree with him. I think in principle, if I understand what he's saying, that I if you marry someone and don't have ooey gooey feelings about them at all, that's rough. That's a
Yeah.
rougher marriage.
Right. Yeah. If it's just a friendship
Yeah,
of like,
because
hey, I think,
what happens later is when you have hard times, you recall back to the beginning and say, "Hey, we had something really good, that we had chemistry."
yeah,
Yeah, well, it serves as a protective later to have those memories of that chemistry. So I,
yeah,
I think I think some of the talk about, you don't need to have that chemistry. I think that's misguided.
yeah. The happy wife, happy life thing. It's I, two questions on this. The first is, should that be something that employers are looking for? If you're looking to hire someone into your business, do you look at like how's their relationship with their family? And second, if you're looking at a guy and he never stands up to his wife ever, um, or on the flip side, a guy who only stands up, like he's just always, he's got the turning against.
Yeah.
Um, what should you be wary about?
Well, as an employer, you get into legal questions, right? I mean,
That's also true. Yeah,
there's the EEOC and the Americans with Disabilities Act. So you really can't ask those,
yeah,
comma, but if you find them out, pay attention to them.
right.
Um, um, I know a person who was literally told, "We will hire you at this high number if you divorce your wife." And he said, "I can't do that." And they go,
Yeah,
Okay, but yeah, I mean, just this is life changing money, but we know that she will create problems."
yeah.
Okay,
Wow.
so that was an informal offer. If that had gone through formal channels, they could have gotten sued.
To the dark ages.
Yeah,
Yes.
exactly.
Yeah.
But if a person volunteers that stuff, you should pay attention to it.
Yeah. And there are surely um, things you'll notice about them in the whole interview process that will kind of like that'll play out.
Yeah, but what you're getting at is something that we talked about earlier in our interview, which is some people go, "I'm different at work than I am at home." No, you're pretty much the same person. You could
Yeah.
maybe put on a front at work,
Right.
but you're still the same person. And if you are having to put on a front at work, that's exhausting. Or if you're having to put on a front at home, that's exhausting.
Yeah. I think last thing we're going to have time for today, the fifth point you brought up in your book, was having a good a friendship life, a
Yeah.
good social life. You shouldn't be a hermit. How do you find the right friends? There's an odd dynamic there because sometimes God puts the right friends in your path, like the people that you graduate from high school with. They just happen to be your best friends throughout the rest of your life, right? Because they
Yep.
have similar goals, they have similar
Yep.
values, similar motivation, all of that. But then there are people who didn't have those kinds of friends in high school, and they have to kind of build those right friends.
Hmm.
How do you kind of tell whether the people you are in a social circle now, you're with them because it's just easy, you graduate high school together, versus you're with them for the right reasons because you think that together you guys are gonna do better for each other and do better for the world.
Well, there's part of it about purpose. having purposeful relationships. But much like a romantic relationship, sometimes there's just chemistry. Sometimes you just, you riff real well together, and you have fun together. Um, the the wonderful thing about high school and college is many of the options of people have already been filtered out. So you're far more likely to be hanging around with more people who are more like you in terms of values and background. And so it's easier to create those relationships. Um, and for whatever reason, um, a lot of people find that relationships between in their friends in their from high school, college, early adulthood, those relationships last. And part of the reason is it just takes a long time to build a friendship. We tend to think that, oh, I met this person at this retreat, and like we're together forever, ride or die. No, you just met them over the weekend. um to build a relationship, you build it with tiny little interactions, much like a marital relationship. Tiny little communications, tiny little interactions, tiny little exchanges, and it takes decades to build a really strong relationship. Yep.
Yeah.
I would say
How do
probably
you
my closest friends, my newest close friend I have known for over 20 years. That's the newest one.
Right.
The one I've known the longest, I've known since junior high.
Yeah.
My best friend was a college roommate. But we spent a lot of time interacting and building those relationships.
Yeah. Um, how do you, when you're evaluating people, figure out whether this is someone that you should be friends with, or someone that you can be acquaintances with, but they're not going to be good for you, and you're not going to be good for them long term?
Um, Half of that's really easy to answer. The other half is hard. Are they going to be good for you? Do you feel like you become a better person when you're around them? Do they have similar values and goals? Are you pointed in the same direction in terms of the things that are most important to you? And do you find yourself becoming a better man or woman when you're around them? Um, the second part is, am I good for the other person? That's a harder one to sometimes suss out. Am I a good friend to this person? Are they a better man or woman because of my involvement? And that's a harder one to cipher out.
Yeah. What does that look like figuring that out?
When I was a teenager, I was in the youth group with a young woman, and I found that I just made fun of her all the time, and that was not good. And I
Hmm.
realized I can't be around her because I can't resist making fun of her. And it wasn't good for her. It wasn't good for me. And so I realized that for whatever reason, my worst self came out around this person. So I made sure I didn't be around her. And it was nothing she did. It wasn't her fault. I was being a jerk. And so I realized I can't be around this person because I can't resist temptation. So you look at, am I treating this person with respect, with dignity, with honor? And if I'm not, then I should divorce myself, not maritally, but in
Right.
friendship, I should divorce myself from that person because it's bad for that other person.
Yeah, and that's also a good question to ask when you're looking for a spouse. What should you be looking for? That's the kind of person that's going to make you happy and productive.
Well, a spouse, their job is not to make you happy. If you believe your spouse will make you happy, you will be on a fool's errand. Um, they can be fun, lots of pleasure, lots of common values, but and here we're going to get into theology. The only If you put any person in the place of what only God can do, then they become an idol. And every person will crush under that weight. So no spouse can make you happy. Can they make you happier? Yes.
Right.
Can they make your life more pleasant? Yes. But their job is not to make you happy. That's internal to you and related to your relationship with God.
Yep.
Anytime you put on someone else responsibilities that only God can provide, and happiness is one of those, then you turn them into an idol and they will always crush under that weight.
Yeah. Agreed. So what should you be looking for in a spouse?
Um,
Because
well,
the productive part is in there.
yeah,
Like
the
if you marry
productive
the
part
right
is in there.
person.
But I mean, I start out with chemistry. Uh, do you find them really attractive? Do you find yourself smitten by them? That's the infatuation part. I think that has to be there. But then
Mhm.
beyond that is, do we have do we have similar values? Do we align with the things that are most important to us? And so you got to have discussions about value sorts of questions in terms of faith, in terms of money, in terms of parenting, in terms of sex. All of those things have to be on the table, and you can have these discussions, and they'll give you an idea, but then you've got to watch the person in context. How do they treat their friends? How do they treat their family? So look for people who who sh- who aren't just completely enamored with you, but they're also making other people's lives better, showing respect and dignity to all the people around them. Um, it's easy for them to treat you well because they're infatuated with you. How do they treat everybody else? Because that's how they're going to treat you eventually.
Yeah. um Back to the friendship thing, trying to figure out if someone is a good fit for, like, a good friend is going to be a good friend for you. How do you figure out personality differences versus just the way they live, maybe where they grew up, what they were born into, those kinds of things?
Yeah, so I would say that that second part are values differences. What are their priorities? And different families have different priorities. What's important to them? Personality. Um, there are You can find people who have the same personality as you. Probably what you'll find is people who have complementary personalities to you. They're not exactly the same as you, but there's a you know to there's a yin and a yang. There's a balance there,
Hmm.
and so you're looking for people that you balance with.
Yeah. um Economic differences also play a role in that, especially as people get older. They have different economic statuses. How do you balance that between friends?
It's pretty hard. If you have a person who suddenly is earning a ton of money, um, and they want you as a friend, if you're really a good friend, you don't want to be a hanger on. You don't want to be a kiss up. You don't want to be a toady. You want to be an equal friend.
Hmm.
And so if your friend has so much money, they say, "Hey, I'm going to go to the Bahamas for the weekend. Why don't you come with me?" You go, "Well, I can't afford to go to the Bahamas over the weekend." They go, "Oh, I'll pick up the ticket," because as a percentage of their income, that's the same as going to the movies for you.
Right. Yeah.
Well, so you go to the Bahamas, you have a nice weekend, and then you start to feel guilty, which is, there's always parity in a relationship. There's always this sense of equal give and take. And if the person who can go to the Bahamas every weekend wants to take you, for whom it's overwhelmingly expensive, you're not going to be able to run together, and you're eventually going to pull away because you feel like you're some sort of charity case.
Hmm.
So people with high um, income or high net worth, if they want those people to stick with them, they have to say, "Listen, I've got money, but you're providing me value. It's not economic value, but you're telling me the truth. You're going to take me out back and kick me in the tail if I do something stupid. I need that in my life. Whether
Hmm.
I have money or not, I
Right.
have more money than you. No, you can't keep up financially, but I need your friendship. I need all of the non-economic things. And if you have these differences in economic background and you want to keep a friend, you have to make sure they know that they provide you so much non-economic value.
Yeah, and not trying to play, because like in when a lot of when people are economically similar, you can play games like, "Hey, who wants to go to the movies? I'll pay for the tickets because it's my birthday," or whatever,
Yeah.
right? Those kinds of things. When you get older, if you become or they become more financially successful than you or you than they, not bringing money into the relationship at all, kind of, if that makes sense.
Well,
Is
money's
that
always
correct?
going to be in a relationship. But what happens is very often people who have less money, they recognize the other person who has more money, it doesn't cost them that much. So then they just allow the other person to pay
To
for everything.
pick up the ticket. Yeah.
Yeah, so I'll give you an example. I have a really good friend, and he's been super financially successful, and he's got way, way more money than me. And we were out at this kind of normal mid-level restaurant, and I think we each got a bowl of chili. And we'd been, we've known each other for a long time, and the check came, and I I said, "It's my turn," and he said, "What?" And I said, "Well, it's my turn. You got it last time." And he starts doing this. And I said, "What are you doing?" And he goes, "I'm thinking." I go, "What are you thinking about?" He says, "I'm thinking about the last time somebody paid for a meal for me." And he said it was 2.5 years ago. I mean, I just bought a guy a bowl of chili. I mean,
Yeah.
it's not like it was, a big steak dinner.
Right. Yeah.
So, but it meant something to him
Yeah.
because everybody always assumes he's going to pick up the tab. And so
Yeah.
it I still don't have as much money as him, but those little demonstrations matter.
Yeah. Is this um game different for guys and girls?
That's a really good question. Um, in terms of economics, it probably plays out differently, but I think women need to know that they're providing non-economic value if the other person has more money. And women and men, we all need friends. We all need people who are going to tell us the truth.
Yeah. Yeah. How do you build those ride or die, those good friends, both for men and for women?
Tiny little um, give and takes. I mean, you start to tell more and more about yourself. You start to depend on each other more and more. Um, as you said, it's my birthday. I'm picking up the movies. Um, you do those little things, not just economically, but interpersonally. Like you find out your friend, you know, her mom's in the hospital. So what do? You go visit, and that's a non-economic way to build that relationship. I mean, it's little things like you know their family. You ask questions about them. It's not always about you. You want to sincerely know what's going on in their life. That matters.
Yeah. It seems similar to building a relationship between a husband and wife, or at least maintaining a good one. It's just kind of turning toward give and take.
It is. It really is. I mean, the basic building blocks that Gottman talked about for marital relationships work in every other relationship as well. Work relationships, social relationships. His stuff is really foundational stuff for all of our relationships.
Yeah. Um, I think that's all we have time for today. What can people expect from you here in the near future? Where can people find you and this book online? All of that.
Yeah, so you can find me at drrogerhall.com, drrogerhall.com. The three books I have, which are Staying Happy, Being Productive, DIY Brain, and Expedition. They're all available on Amazon. Um, the two of the books, Staying Happy, Being Productive, and DIY Brain, are on Audible. And I found out recently that if you have a premium Spotify account, they're included. Did you
Oh,
know Audible books are audiobooks are included in a premium Spotify
I
thing?
saw I saw that Spotify had some audiobooks like available, but I didn't know that was because I had Audible.
What? No, it's not because you have Audible. I'm sorry, I misspoke. But like Spotify, if you have a premium account, the audiobooks are available. And so mine are available
Huh.
on Spotify for on Audible. On
There you
Audible,
go.
on Spotify, all those platforms. So
Yeah.
if you're a book listener, they're available as well. So you can find all those things. Find me on drrogerhall.com. I have a podcast called Second Thoughts with Roger Hall, and that is on all the major platforms.
Fantastic. I'll put all those links in the description. It's been a pleasure
Awesome.
talking to you. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Jackson.
Appreciate it.
Bye.
See you guys.